Tonight on Spark, our creative nature. Snow drawings on a grand scale in the Sierra.
This piece really asks me as the artist to give up a lot of control, to just let go and see what happens.
A San Francisco choreographer's spellbinding ode to Mother Nature.
The natural world to me is a friend, is a best friend. Yet here is our planet. It's in trouble, and I don't think we realize we need to care for it.
Berkeley designers take a green approach to 3D printing.
3D printing with salt is incredibly inexpensive. It only takes sun and wind to make this material.
And capturing Arctic soundscapes before they melt away.
I hope that by experiencing the sounds and these sort of hidden voices of the ice and bones and the shells, that people can feel a real connection to these places that are so far removed from us.
It's all ahead on Spark. Funding for KQED Arts is provided by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the California Arts Council, Diane B. Wilsey, Helen Sarah Steyer, the William and Gretchen Kimball Fund, and the members of KQED.
I've always been a really big fan of nature. Even as a child, when I was upset, while other children locked themselves into their room, I took a blanket, put it in my bike basket, and I was gone. I'm Sonia Hemsey, and I'm a visual artist. Snow drawings actually started out of play. I was at an artist residency in Colorado, and I had snowshoes because I wanted to hike in the mountains. I found those really big, pristine fields of snow, and I just had to do something with them. So I started walking these patterns, and it became interesting to me when I took out my camera and realized that the shadow that gets cast into the imprint makes the pattern. If there is no sun, there's no pattern. In 2009, there was this pilot who just offered that he could take me up so I could take photographs. It was pretty amazing because I had no idea how it would look on the top. I was in that airplane, I was like, wow, can't believe this. I feel like spirals are sort of inherent in us and in nature. Our galaxy is a spiral. Our fingerprint is sort of a spiral. So I just feel like it's a form that we all understand. It's very meditative, walking these patterns. Basically having the landscape sort of evolve around me. And that triggered the idea that this would be something to share with other people. If I do this with community, we can create a much, much bigger piece. Within the past 6 or so winters, I've done pieces in really many different scales. It's really up to the participants to interpret my idea. In France, the piece kind of wrapped around the mountainside along a ski slope. Lake Catamount in Colorado was probably one of the biggest. We tried to recreate the Yampa River that once flowed through that valley on top of a frozen reservoir that is now there where the river used to be. I asked people to imagine themselves as a drop of water and to think about how water moves, how it meanders. It was amazing. It worked really well. It emphasizes the landscape and hopefully gets people's minds going about how beautiful this landscape is and how important it is that we preserve it that way. This is my first project in the Sierra Nevada. The Sierras just didn't have much snow the past few winters. It's really amazing that we can do this year. At the Sagehand Field Station, there are 2 big meadows, and I'm hoping that we can cover both of them. You basically only have to get that first little round straight, and then you just keep following. You guys can go along the forest line as tight as you can. All right, let's go. This piece really asks me as the artist to give up a lot of control, to just let go and see what happens.
When you start out, you're sort of timid and you're feeling it out, but as you get more bold and moving through, you start to develop your own style.
There's so many people out there all doing it together, and you kind of have to work with each other and like, hey, are you going to use that space over there, or can I go that way?
Snow is near and dear to our hearts. Most of us ski on it or snowshoe on it just from point A to point B. This is definitely something new and different.
When people think of public art, they often think of sculpture or murals. Snow drawings are a wonderful way to have art that no one really has to worry about. It comes and it goes.
We humans have put so much stuff on this planet. As an artist, I feel like there's no need for me to create even more stuff. I really love the fact that this work is ephemeral. It just melts away, and that's that. And then there is only the documentation left of it, and of course, the memory of it in those people who participated.
Dead Reckoning is a dance piece that I created in 2014, and it's fundamentally about the human being's relationship to the natural world.
We're going to do the first section right now.
My name is KT Nelson, and I'm co-artistic director of ODC. We're a dance company in San Francisco.
Okay, so can you
Get around him.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. With this thing called climate change, we have scientific evidence, we have statistical analysis. I think maybe the missing ingredient is our emotional world. Dance, because it is human beings on stage in a world, can help us embody the meaning of climate change. The term Dead Reckoning is navigational. It refers to when you don't have your regular points of reference, the stars. Where we are with climate change is that we are navigating blindly right now. I think we're in the middle of Dead Reckoning in the dance. There is this lime green snow or confetti that first starts coming from the dancer's hands. And it's lime green. Nothing in nature is like that. So it is about how we have transformed our world into a place we do not know.
My name is Josie Sedan. I'm one of the dancers here at ODC. No dance or work of art necessarily is going to give you the facts about climate change. What it can do is give voice to how people feel about it. How does it affect the way we relate to one another? Does it create anxiety? Does it create vulnerability?
Dead Reckoning came out of a sabbatical I took in 2013 to Death Valley. One of the things that really hit me is this great magnitude of nature. It made me realize how powerful nature is. Even though we're so teeny as individuals, we're having a huge impact in changing this world. So this is on the valley floor. It's about 200 feet below sea level. I asked Joe and John Renew to compose the music so you can see.
For me, images and the feeling of a work have a lot to do with how I end up composing the music. The music for Dead Reckoning evolved over a process of working with KT. I would watch the dancers rehearse different sections. And that had a lot to do with how I composed the music. In particular, there's a scene in the dance where there's two women who are running. And to me, it really expresses this sort of frantic need and desire to do something now with the environment. There's a sound of a tree falling. So let me play that for you. The sound of the tree falling is used almost as a piece of music.
I found it a powerful metaphor for where we are. There is something about the tree separating from its roots, the inevitableness of the descent, the unpredictableness of when it will actually fall. That's how I feel we are in the world right now with our environment. One of the things I try to get across in the piece is this lack of awareness. Dennis dances solo around the space while everybody is looking into him. And at some point, he takes Steffi's head and he turns it to the audience and says, "Look, look," because he wants us to understand the implications of our actions. The natural world, to me, is a friend, is a best friend. I think if a dear friend is sick, any one of us would turn around and care for them. Yet here is our planet. It's in trouble, and I don't think we realize we need to care for it. Today, we are at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. I'm putting all the final elements together. The costume, the lighting.
4, 5, 6, yeah.
Actually, I'm feeling a little nervous. You never know what's going to happen because it's live.
The biggest challenge of dancing Dead Reckoning is just going 0 to 100 and being really physical right away. Curtain comes up, lights are up, and we're already going.
One of the things I want to convey is the feeling of being lost in this world of climate change. The panic, the franticness, the futileness of it. At the very end of this piece, there's a soloist very downstage, caught up in her own little world, and there's a couple in the back, what I call the romantic couple. They are just walking inside this snow-filled world. And eventually, they step on this other person and smash her. So at the end, I ask the question, is what we do to the environment also what we do to each other? I don't know if I can change somebody's behavior or actions in the world. The one thing I can do is try to step into people's heart and try to get them to say, oh wow, we got to do something. That's what I hope.
We started 3D printing 6 or 7 years ago.
We're testing how do you make a very large object with a very small 3D printer. And so we printed these blocks and we asked our son to build a wall, and he took the bricks and he built this 3D printed wall himself. And we said, okay, we're onto something. We don't know if 3D printing will be a viable process for the building industry, but we believe so. And this is what we're researching. This is about speculation and investigation. I'm Ronald Rael. I'm an associate professor of architecture here at the University of California, Berkeley.
I'm Virginia Sanfratello, an artist, an educator, and an architect.
We have a studio called Rael Sanfratello.
And we're partners in emerging objects.
Most of the objects that are 3D printed that people know about are made out of plastic. We wanted to make things out of different kinds of materials that had more integrity. That's really great material. In some way, all materials come from a powder source, whether it's powder like sand that turns into glass or iron ore that turns into steel. So we were interested in those kinds of materials and how they could be used in a 3D printer. This is salt that's been harvested from the San Francisco Bay. We're going to make a 3D printable material.
3D printing with salt is incredibly inexpensive. It only takes sun and wind to make this material.
There's 330 tiles that have been printed.
It goes back to this idea of using literally the ground underneath your feet and thinking about how that material can become the architecture.
What one could do with this material and what its possibilities are.
And these materials that we're using, many of them, are already in the construction industry waste stream. So we've developed a formula for 3D printing with recycled rubber tires. Tires are one of the world's biggest material waste problems. We 3D print with cement, with wood.
Coffee, tea, sugar, bone. The objects that you see on the table are all about a controlled failure. It all started by wanting to 3D print clay. We were really learning how the printer works. How does clay behave? We've traveled all over the world looking at buildings made out of earth. In traditional cultures, frugality drives design often. And frugality can make something enormously elegant because something has to be useful and it has to be beautiful and it has to be well made at the same time.
The diamond mesh pattern in here, like this. We're currently working towards designing and 3D printing a house.
We're not so excited about the idea that a single giant machine can 3D print a house out of a single material.
Matthias, your dinosaur is going to be done in a little while.
We like our floors maybe to be a different material from our walls. We like some materials soft and some materials hard. And we'll just keep this flush.
Currently we have 3D printed clay tiles that make up the exterior cladding.
We're allowing the machine and gravity and other forces to take effect so that each part ultimately ends up being different. I can totally imagine it being the whole skin of a building. Yeah, can't you?
And we want to 3D print everything in the house.
That is 3D printed. That is a 3D printed lamp. That's 3D printed.
If we could 3D print the cutlery and the dishes as well, it would be a total work of art. I think a lot of times we feel like we have to justify beauty.
Comments are always, is it functional or is it just beautiful? But why is beauty never considered a function?
We look at our own work and we say, okay, you know it's not right until everyone around you can look at it and say, that's beautiful.
If beauty has a function, it makes us happy. We would see something and say, what's the function of that pattern? It makes you happy.
Yes. We're inspired by the Berkeley Botanical Gardens.
It's completely twisted and folded up on itself.
The plants collected there, their forms, curvaceous surfaces are looking along the perimeter.
Like hair.
Plants are good at controlling and funneling water, shaping themselves to point towards the sun. Oh, look at that. So they do some things that we would like to do in our designs.
What if a brick can also be a planter and hold vegetation?
Our cool bricks are designed to take advantage of passive cooling technology.
Maybe here there's a new kind of structural shell that you can occupy. I think one of my focuses when I teach students is that I'd like them to know that design isn't shopping. Can't wait to see it all come together. They're in control of the making process.
And now we're trying this woven one. My name's Rebecca Russino. I'm a grad student here. I'm looking at milkweed as a building material. Actually, I was thinking maybe we could use that G-code. It's good at acoustic dampening, thermal insulation, absorbing oil.
They can draw inspiration from the world around them, from art and from theory, and they can be innovative. Here's the old printed hemp.
So how can we make something new to be implemented in a new architecture for the 21st century?
How much function can you pack in to design? How many layers of possibility? I think that's what we're after.
What is the power of sound? I think sound is really intimate, very visceral, and maybe it's evolutionary because we need to hear dangers, right? My name is Cheryl Leonard, and I'm a composer, a performer, and an instrument builder. I work with field recordings and found objects from nature that are played as musical instruments. I think I've just always been very connected to the natural world. I would notice the sounds like when I'd be hiking across a bunch of loose rock. I'd be like, oh, these rocks are very musical. I tend to collect objects from wherever I go that might be useful for making musical instruments. Each of these little petals is making a different pitch. It's a really good pine cone. These little jars all have rocks that I brought back from the Arctic. And we can play a little melody. I grew up in rural Wisconsin, and I really like snow and ice. It's my greatest fantasy to go to the most remote wilderness on this earth. Because I was a grantee of the National Science Foundation's Antarctic Artisan Writers Program, I was out in Antarctica every day with my field recorder and my microphones, just to listen to all the subtle variations of the sounds that the ice would make, or to hear the dialogues going on between different penguins. To be next to the elephant seals when they're sleeping and to listen to them snoring and inhaling and exhaling. It's just very intimate. So I returned with hours and hours of field recordings and boxes of objects. Here is an underwater microphone. Then I just start seeing what kinds of sounds can I make out of these objects. It's working. I have these penguin bone instruments, which is an inescapable analogy to the death of the Adelie penguins in that area. So when I compose the pieces, I think about how to combine the field recordings and the sounds that would be played live on stage on the natural object instruments. I'm doing a set of pieces that are based on my experiences in the polar regions. And these are all pieces that relate to climate change. I had some things I definitely wanted to address. When I was in Antarctica, there's some very dramatic changes happening there. The ice is melting back very quickly. And they predict that in 10 years or less, there will be no more Adelie penguins in that part of Antarctica. So you can see it. The ecosystem is really in turmoil. So I'm going to be doing a piece at the David Brower Center, which uses icicles. The piece is called Meltwater. Hey, Philip.
How are you?
For this performance, Philip Greenleaf will be joining me. Turn up the 4-liter. Philip is an incredible musician. He's a composer also. He primarily plays reed instruments, but I've got him playing icicles and penguin bones and rocks.
The idea that I get to work with someone who's developed their own sound, their own direction, they're carving out their own way, that's really important to me.
interested in creating something beautiful with my music. To share some of the incredible moments I've had in the natural world with people. But then I also want to really have an effect on them.
Playing this music takes more finesse and articulate moves in a way that other music doesn't. It's among the hardest music that I've ever played.
I hope that by experiencing the sounds and these sort of hidden voices of the penguins and the ice and bones and the shells, that people can feel a real connection to these places that are so far removed from us. We see in the field of soundscape ecology that we can learn a lot about the health of an environment by listening to its sounds and how they change. So it would be good for us to listen more.
For more on tonight's stories, visit KQED Arts online at kqed.org/arts. Funding for KQED Arts is provided by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the California Arts Council, Diane B. Wilsey, Helen Sarah Steyer, the William and Gretchen Kimball Fund, and members of KQED.